Okay, so as we've just heard, there's an awful lot of opportunities for enterprises, organisations to, should we say, evolve their communication infrastructure. It's not a case of most organisations going straight to 5G. They actually evolve these services to use 5G as a connectivity solution. Personally there, I enjoy the rural aspects, the agri-tech, and also bringing reliable communication to rural locations, which would be a fantastic use for 5G connectivity. So when we look at it, is 5G really a haven for digital opportunities? I'm lucky enough today to be joined by Charles Lowe from the Digital Health and Care Alliance, and likewise Omar Alassil from Nokia to discuss these opportunities. So, Charles, before we start looking at the chances for 5G, can you briefly introduce yourself and a bit of background to your role here?
Yeah, very happy to, John. My name is Charles Lowe. As John said, I'm Chief Executive of the Digital Health and Care Alliance. We're an 850-member organisation. We were set up by Innovate UK in 2013, and our purpose in life is to help small SMEs to grow and flourish in the UK health environment. My background, I used to work for BT many years ago, and in the noughties and the early teens, I implemented and developed telehealth and telecare applications in various parts of the country. I worked for the public sector, I worked for the private sector, and I also am the chair of a digital inclusion charity as well.
Fantastic. So well-rounded, well-experienced member of the panel then, Charles. That's great to know you've got the background, should we say. And then Omar, can you say a few words about yourselves and your work at Nokia?
Sure, thanks, John. So my name is Omar Alassil, and I work in Nokia, and many of you obviously know Nokia from the mobile handset, but the main business of Nokia today is the creation of technology that enables communication service providers and enterprises around the world to offer services to their customers. So we are very active, obviously, in the 5G infrastructure and setting up the networks and the associated services around the world. My specific role within Nokia is to focus on the AI and automation, as well as digital architecture, to allow us to deliver services in a automated, agile, modern way to our customers, right? Leveraging the latest and greatest technologies. I've been working, in this technology area for the last 15 years or so, in various capacities and in various companies. But yeah, pretty much now focused on the AI and automation within Nokia.
Fantastic. And then there's always a lot of hype, should we say, or purported hype around new technologies being delivered and deployed, for example. Omar, do you think 5G really will change the way people live and work today? And if so, from what aspects? What use cases do you see generally? I think you've gone on to mute, unfortunately, Omar.
Sorry, sorry for that. So yeah, 5G is a great enabler, and it will change pretty much about everything, right, around us in a few years' time. So if you think about it, what is the main thing that is going to change is it allows better connectivity for more intelligent things. And let me draw here an interesting analogy. I was reading recently the book Humankind by Rutger Bregman, and he's putting an idea that we as humans, as Homo sapiens, right, despite the common belief that we outcompeted Neanderthals because we are individually more intelligent, right? He's arguing, no, actually individually they are more intelligent than us because some evidence show they have bigger brains, but we were better connected. And drawing from this analogy, 5G will allow us to leverage that connectivity between ourselves as humans, between things that we deal with. And when you are combining connectivity with intelligence, the potential is boundless, right? There are loads of opportunities that you are going to take, right, when you have those two elements together. So it's definitely going to change the way we live. I'll give you an example, right? All of us are familiar with autonomous driving, and today we have already on the road self-driving cars. But the way it is done today is you are basically stuffing more and more intelligence in the car itself, and it's great. It takes all the sensors and information, process, and take decisions, right? But imagine if this car has a better connectivity with everything around it. If this car is communicating with the car behind it, with the car in front of it, with the traffic light, with the sensors, with the light, etc., right? Imagine the efficiency and basically how better the decisions are going to be, right? If you have that sort of connectivity. So instead of really adding more and more intelligence in every bits and pieces, I would argue that you would be that will not give you the economy of scale, right? So you'd better have yes, intelligent devices, but with better connectivity, you get a better overall outcome, right? All together, right? So this is how I see. This is one example, right? How I see 5G is changing the future, but there are a lot of other use cases, right, across the different areas we live and interact with.
No, that would be great. I can just imagine it might be able to mitigate some of the traffic jams on the M25, for example. So that would be really good. And then Charles, yourself, do you have a view on, is 5G really going to be such a life changer?
I was chairing one of these sessions last year, and one of the presenters there was a lady called Anne Williams, who is I think still commissioning and contracts manager at Liverpool City Council, and she was talking about the Liverpool testbed for 5G, which was run last year, and they concluded from that there was a saving of £2,480 pounds per user per year for the NHS and social services for the use of 5G. And that came partly through better medication adherence, and partly through better cooperation between the service users, stroke patients, and the social care and the NHS staff. So that looked really quite exciting, and that's really before we've gone into a much more detailed, essentially re-engineering of health with the use of something that's always on and is reliable and has low latency, which doubtless you'll be asking me about in a few minutes' time.
Low latency, for example, is certainly a benefit, plus the density of devices that can connect within a single cell using 5G. So Charles, looking at health and well-being, healthcare, Medicare, however we want to refer to it, what would you say are the most exciting opportunities in that sector using 5G? Well,
what we've been doing with health so far is essentially taking snapshots. When you go and see the doctor, the doctor asks you what your symptoms are, and even with COVID-19 and the use of the telephone as being much more immediate than the previous sort of wait for 3 weeks before you actually got to see the doctor, he's still looking at snapshots. And picking up on the density of devices that you were talking about, and also some of the other issues that I was mentioning a few moments ago of high bandwidth communication, always on, reliability, and low latency, means that somebody somewhere can now take a movie of you, essentially, rather than take snapshots. And now I'm not suggesting that your GP should be following you all the time. However, technology can follow you all the time and can pick up when things start changing very quickly. So what this does is it opens up a completely new way of managing people. It also identifies, or it will help clinicians to identify a completely different conceptualization of disease, because at present, typically you go along and you talk to your doctor and you tell your doctor what your symptoms are. He asks you some information, he or she asks you for some information. They might do some tests on you. But if you've got lots of wearables on you, for example, the wearables can tell the doctor an awful lot about you before you've even opened your mouth, and they're much more objective in what they produce. So they can do a lot of diagnosis. And in fact, now we have some wearables that can tell you've got COVID-19, even if you don't think you've got it yourself. And that's just one wearable. But if you could imagine a number of them networked together, they can come up with some fairly clever ideas and thoughts. So we're going to start seeing diseases broken down into smaller and smaller subsections, each of which will have its own separate cure. So the overall cure rate, I think, will improve. And indeed, the medical definitions are going to change. And what this will do in the end, I think, is it will change the doctor-patient relationship very significantly.
Mm-hmm. And that would obviously be fantastic with the COVID, as you mentioned. So it's essentially being able to garner more detailed patient-specific information, which, as you say, could actually be uploaded over a network to reduce doctor appointment times, remote appointments. There's so many use cases there. And then, Omar, from your perspective, do you have any views here on opportunities? I know the manufacturing sector's ripe for 5G.
Yeah, so I mean, we look at it slightly differently, right? So rather than looking at what sector, right, has more appealing use cases for 5G, we look at it from a use case point of view. So companies usually don't buy technology just for the sake of getting a new piece of equipment or a new technology, right? They look at what benefit they can harvest from this new technology. And if you look at the three characteristics of 5G, whether it is the latency and reliability, or the enhanced throughput, or the scale, any use case that basically matches or take benefit from those three characteristics make a good potential use case for 5G, and that could be across the industries. Whether it is, I mean, there are opportunities in the mining industry, in ports and airports and harbors, data-driven constructions, for example, the healthcare that, as Charles mentioned, and manufacturing, as you mentioned, right? And for example, for manufacturing, if you can leverage the technology to create this agile shop floor or the factory floor, right? To basically adapt to the demand. We all know now the demand is changing, right, rapidly, and we need to be very dynamic. So instead of having fixed equipments that you cannot change, right, on a daily basis, if you have equipments that can move around and communicate wirelessly, leveraging the 5G technology, right, that gives you this agility and efficiency to change on demand, right? So today you are manufacturing something, tomorrow if the demand changes, you can easily swap and leverage the same product lines, right, to manufacture something else. So it's taking really the lean and agile methodology in the manufacturing to the next level, right? Think about also 360 video feeds, as Charles mentioned, right? Now you can take a video of someone, but also this has applicability in the media industry, it has applicability in the healthcare, it has applicability in the remote learning, and many other industries, right? So one use case can fit multiple sectors, right? So we see 5G is, as I mentioned, it's an enabler, and it comes with a lot of other things. One of it is the digitization and the advancement in technologies, right? And those will improve the operational aspects of manufacturing, and specifically any heavy asset, basically intensive industry, right? Any industry that has intensive assets will take benefit of 5G. So today, for example, some industries like web scalers, right? They already took advantage of the technology, so they were least impacted by the pandemic, right? But those industries that required physical presence of the employees in the factory, they were less adapted to the pandemic and the lockdown and those changes, right? But with 5G, it will give them that sort of ability. Now, if you ask, I mean, what are those top industries that make exciting use cases? So there was a recent industry survey, and it listed manufacturing as number one, healthcare, and then retail as the top three industries, right? That make good, compelling use case of 5G. But this is not, I mean, if you ask the communication service providers, their answers to the survey is slightly different. They think that the financial services will make the number one, and the media and the healthcare comes next. Although arguably there is no compelling use case for the financial services, but maybe they are looking at it from who is their top spending customer today, and they are thinking that this will continue, right? So we need to think differently. We need to think about it from a use case point of view across the industries, not limit one industry and say, yeah, 5G is great for this industry and not for that industry, right? One use case could make a great fit for multiple industries, in my view.
Yes, it's interesting. It's actually, like we say, using 5G as that connectivity layer, but it's then different when you actually look at the use cases. It's the business benefit or output base, should we say, that we should actually be looking at. So with all the proposed, should we say, appliances of 5G, are they actually realistically deliverable? I know it can be delivered from a technical perspective, but I mean, does it make a positive business case? Can organizations actually make a return on investment on their 5G infrastructure? It's very challenging. I know, Charles, you mentioned a £2,400 saving per patient, should we say. So does that mean that there'll be a concerted drive to roll out these capabilities and solutions within the healthcare world?
Well, that's certainly what the Liverpool testbed reported that Anne Williams told us at the event last year. The medical world is of necessity very conservative. Now, if your doctor or if my doctor said to me, "I've come up with this new idea that might help you, but it's never been tested on anybody before, and it might just kill you," you probably wouldn't be very excited about that idea. And so doctors, understandably, are extremely cautious about about embracing new ideas. Sometimes, arguably, from the point of view of people such as myself, who thrive on change, possibly a little bit too conservative, but there we go. But as Omar has said, we're talking here about a communications channel, essentially. But there are lots of other things that we need to put in place in order to make it work, and they aren't necessarily there at present. For example, as I mentioned earlier, no doctor is going to be following the output of all the sensors of an individual, except perhaps for research purposes. So we need something that's receiving the information and it's interpreting it. So we're going to need to use some fairly sophisticated artificial intelligence to analyze all these signals coming in and identify when there's an important signal there and discarding all the noise. Now, just mentioning artificial intelligence means that you've got to regulate that, and you've got to make sure that the artificial intelligence can be relied on to come up with the signal when the signal's there. So that in itself is going to take quite a lot of time. The Europeans have just, the EU has just introduced the medical devices regulation. We have done something slightly differently in the UK, but these processes will take probably a year, 18 months. To verify any AI that is developed. Then you need to get acceptance by clinicians that they will respond to those readings. So, for example, at present, if I go along to my doctor and I say, I've got an Apple Watch, I've been recording my pulse rate continuously for so long, I've been recording my energy expenditure for so long, and so on and so forth. Can I give it to you? He'll say no, because I don't want it. There's nothing I can do with it at present. And in fact, if you give it to me, you place a responsibility on me as a doctor to do something about it. And I don't know what I should be doing with it. So please don't give it to me. So that's all got to change. People have also got to get used to the idea of actually wearing things that will do these recordings. I remember when I was introducing telecare in London Borough of Newham, it would be about 15 years ago now. One of the things we wanted to do was to run online pulmonary rehabilitation clinics. So the idea was that somebody would have a camera, and there would be a therapist at the other end, and they would watch what the person was doing and tell them when they were doing it right, rather than everybody going into a town hall. The majority of people we introduced the idea to refused to accept it because they couldn't cope with the idea of having cameras in their homes. Now, almost everybody's got a camera in their home. They've got two outside the front and two outside their back as well. So things have changed, but it'll take some while before that works its way through. So I'm not expecting any instant changes as 5G is rolled out, but the pressure will be on to start doing these things more. We've got some fairly long lead times in the medical world. For example, René Laennec first introduced the stethoscope in 1816. But it was only when in 1865, somebody stood up at an American medical conference, and said, this is a really good idea. We really ought to be using it. That people started using the stethoscope properly. And that was 50 years. Don't expect things to change overnight.
Right. No, it really is a case of social acceptance, especially when it comes to, should we say, GDPR or data privacy, for example. And you touched on there, Charles, about the artificial intelligence, for example. I mean, Omar, from your perspective, which other technologies will actually bring 5G to life? Is it AI, machine learning? How do you see that panning out?
Yeah, it's it's a combination of all those steps and of all those technologies, right? So if we think about, for example, how we are rolling out new 5G networks, or how we are designing those 5G networks, or how we are maintaining and operating them, it's an opportunity for us now to have fresh thinking, right? So we are doing something new, so it will be a shame to do it in the traditional way. I'd like here to mention an example, right? So a couple of decades ago, people were thinking, how can we automate switching on and off lights, right? And they came up with an idea to have a robot arm next to the light switch, that when you enable it is going to switch on and off the light, right? But that gives you an idea how sometimes we limit our thinking, right, to what we have to do or what we are used to, right? So we should not fall into this trap. We should really take a step back, do fresh thinking. And what we are doing is we are looking at the capabilities of AI and automation across the board, from the minute we are designing the network to how we are rolling out the network. Example, right? Instead of sending multiple people on site to do the site survey, now we send drones that take images of the site, and then it feed it to AI and machine learning algorithm that is analyzing, identifying the objects, building the site inventory list, doing the checklist. All of this is done automatically. And we've seen improvements like up to 30% improved quality by doing that, which resulted in like a 25% reduction in site visits. So instead of visiting a site to bring it to life 4 times, you need to visit it 2 times or 3 times, and multiply that by tens of thousands of sites in a nationwide network, like in a country like the UK. That gives you an idea how much efficiency you can gain by adding those small pieces of automation and AI, right, in the way you are rolling out. Not only it is improving the efficiency and quality, but also the sustainability, less CO2 emission, less people going and driving and visiting sites. We used to do drive tests to optimize the networks. Now also we use AI capabilities to optimize the networks. We used to have engineers going and reading through the log files of the network equipments to identify issues. Now we have AI algorithms that are doing that automatically, right? And zero touch. So all of these will obviously bring benefits, right, to how we are doing the rollout of this network. So it's an opportunity for fresh thinking, as I mentioned, right? And back to the basically the use cases, I agree with Charles. There is a pressure to start on, and we have to take it on a step approach, right? You'd rather climb steps rather than scaling a wall. And unless we take those first steps, we will not reach the goal. It will be too late. Actually, some companies will wait until 5G technology mature and the use cases are more obvious, but by then it will be too late. And the people who move first, the early adopters and first movers, will have the better gain, right? From these technologies. So we need to take an example, right? The COVID vaccine, right? We don't wait until it reaches 100% accuracy to take it. We take it even if it is 80%. And similar thinking we need to have here in 5G. Even if we don't have all the low latency use cases we are talking about, there are use cases available today, right, that we should start to see across the industries.
Okay, well, that's really informative. And then we only have a few minutes left. But Charles, from your perspective, I mean, how do the health organisations, for example, actually assess use cases? Is it a case of it's health first, it's the business case, the finance that comes first, or is it a balance of the two?
It's a very good question, that actually, because you can have multiple actors kicking things off. The traditional way of doing things in the health service was to come up with what were called pilots, and we used to have a joke that the NHS had more pilots than EasyJet. I'm sorry, it's a very old one, but it was an extremely good point. And I think people gradually realize after a while that we are talking about changing people's ways of working. So, you know, if you give somebody a medicine, it's a single intervention, and you can do a simple randomized control trial to work out whether the medicine is right or not. It's not quite as simple as that, but it's comparatively simple when looking at using technology, because with technology, you buy the technology and that costs you money. You make the money by changing your care pathways, doing things differently. But you also probably have to train staff. You might have to train patients. You might have to let go some staff. You might have to recruit some staff. So there are a whole series of interventions involved in that. And incorporating those into a randomized control trial are really challenging. And particularly if you come along and you say, we're going to do a pilot for 6 months, and if it doesn't work, we're going to go back to doing what we were doing before. The staff tend to think, understandably, because most people don't embrace change, is to think, well, if we just keep our heads down for the next 6 months and carry on doing what we were doing before, it'll all go away. And sadly, it often does.
Right, I see. Okay, and then conscious of time, I think just a quick one. We've had numerous questions actually coming in whilst we've actually been discussing the topic. And one of them going back to yourself, Omar, is how concerned should enterprises and governments be with potential security concerns with 5G hardware providers? Obviously referring to the Chinese organization versus Ericsson or Nokia, for example. Should they be concerned?
Yeah, I mean, I will not comment specifically on. We are business professionals, not politicians. But when it comes to 5G, I think security is very crucial, and you have to trust the vendor. And it is a question. I mean, governments and companies have to answer: do they trust the vendor or not? And a couple of years ago, the answer was, okay, I don't trust this vendor much, so I will put them only in part of the network. And that to me does not make sense. You either trust or don't trust. So there is nothing in between, because here, when it comes to 5G, it is different from the legacy IT and traditional IT, where the security is around confidentiality of the data and the integrity of the data. But here, it is more about the connectivity, right? So, and especially when it comes to such use cases like manufacturing, public service, health, connectivity is very crucial. And one of the aspects is the availability. You cannot afford to have, I mean, a network that is not 100% available or 99.69 available. Right? So you need to look at those. It's different from what we are used to, right? Whether it is the traditional telco or whether it is the IT, it has the aspects of cloud security that you need to pay attention to. It has the aspect of data security, and remember you are here securing the connectivity, right? Which is different from before. Yeah. So it is definitely a key point here.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So thank you very much, Charles and Omar. I think we've actually run out of time and may have gone over for a few seconds, so apologies for that. It's been great discussion. We're open for questions after the session via email, for example, but I'd like to hand back over to Ant back in the studio.